What is up, guys? Welcome back to my game room. We haven't been in here in quite a while, but yes, I still have my game room, but today is obviously a special occasion because we're going to be reviewing the Xbox Series X. My Xbox Series X finally came in. I wasn't one of the cool kids and got an early system, but I mean, I don't care. I wanted to pick this system up because I love new video games. I love new video game systems and I love new video game hardware. So I was going to do a traditional unboxing and stuff like that, but I thought, hey, so many people have already done that. Why don't I just talk about the system itself, talk about the software that I've been playing on the system, and just give you guys my honest thoughts on the Xbox Series X, because it is an expensive system. This is a $500 monster of a system. So that's what we're gonna do in today's video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you're new, but without any further ado, let's talk about this system. So on the front of the system, as you can see, it's pretty much just business as usual. It has the disk drive on it, unlike the Xbox Series S, which does not have a disk drive on it. I'm a big physical collector, of course, so I wanted to have the system with the disk drive on it. Of course, the Xbox Series X is more powerful than the Xbox Series S as well, so I definitely wanted to have the premium system when it comes to this. I still think the Xbox Series S is a cool system, but I wanted the X. I will say it does pick up fingerprints kind of easily. Now, granted, I am a greasy Italian. You can tell by looking at me that, I'm an Italian dude, so maybe my hands are just a little bit greasy, but you could definitely notice when you hold this system. Obviously, it's not a fashion show or anything like that. I don't care what the system looks like as long as it performs well. Now, I did find a couple interesting things about this system. I was personally under the impression that the only fan on this system was the one on top, where you have, of course, the green underneath that I think looks really, really cool, but that's actually not the case. This is one of the main fans, but there's actually two additional fans on the back of the system as well. I'll get a better shot of that so you guys can see it, but there are two additional fans on the back of the system as well. So this thing does get pretty warm. I wouldn't say it's, more so than any other console that I've experienced, but when the air is coming out of the top of the console, you could definitely sort of feel it. And right now it's winter time, so it's actually a good thing because I hate using the heat. It makes my nose just so stuffy. So I was pretty impressed with the fan system of this because of the fans in the back and the fan on top. You're constantly getting rid of that warm air in the system that would cause it to overheat and things like that. So I think that's actually a positive thing. Looking at the back of the system, it's pretty much just, standard stuff. You have some USB slots, you have your power slot, Ethernet cable, you have your storage expansion if you want to get that $219 1 terabyte Seagate upgrade. I decided to not do that. I think the system with 1 terabyte is going to be enough for me. I can always delete stuff that I'm not playing. Yes, a lot of these next generation games are going to have some pretty substantial file sizes. One of the games I downloaded today was 100 gigs, so filling up quite quickly. But once again, if I get to a point where I need that expanded storage, I'll check it out. But I just sort of think right now, for a vast majority of people, you're not going to buy every game out there under the sun. Although if you play a lot of Game Pass stuff, it might fill up very quickly. But yeah, a basic looking system. I will say it is pretty big. It is pretty heavy as well. If it breaks, you got a great, thing. You can throw it at someone who tries to break in your house and, scramble their brains and things like that. Now, of course, this also comes with a controller, and that's where things I think get the most interesting for me, because I was under the impression that it was just going to be the exact same as the Xbox One controller, and for the most part it is, but there are some key differences that I do want to point out. So of course, looking at the controllers here side by side, we have the two controllers. I will say the analog sticks feel pretty much the same. The D-pad is obviously upgraded though, and I actually like this D-pad a lot more than the standard Xbox One D-pad because I just think it feels better. It definitely feels a lot better in your hands. You can see that the face buttons here as well are a little bit different. I'm not quite sure I like the big letters that sort of stick out. I sort of like the flush ones where it was more, just sort of concealed, whereas this is like sort of all in your face. Of course, there is the quick capture button on here as well, but I think the most interesting thing about the controller is actually on the back of it. Yes, I don't have a back casing for my Xbox One controller because my cousin came over with her kids and our little kid ripped it off, but there's a bit of a texture that is on the Xbox One controller, but it's definitely more pronounced on the Xbox Series X controller, and I actually like that a lot because it actually gives you a little bit of a better grip when you're holding onto the controller. I think the controllers, essentially feel the same, but when I'm playing with this new Xbox Series X controller, I definitely feel like I have a little bit of a better grip on the controller than I do on the original Xbox One controller because of this little texture that's on it. It's actually also on the L trigger and R trigger as well. You could sort of see that there's a bit of a texture, whereas on the Xbox One controller, it is just a smooth plastic. Now, I haven't purchased any other Xbox One controllers, so I don't know if this was a feature that was maybe added to other Xbox One controllers. I only have my standard one that came with my system, but I definitely thought that was a little bit of an improvement. Obviously, they're not doing what PlayStation is doing with the DualSense controller, where they have the haptic trigger feedback and all that sort of stuff, but that also limits you from playing PlayStation 5 games with your last generation controller, whereas with the Xbox Series X, you can use either of these controllers, whichever one essentially just has batteries in it, I guess. But I definitely like the additional added texture of this controller, and I think it's a great controller. Yes, it still uses batteries. Batteries are cheap. Like, I don't mind batteries. I'm one of those weirdos where it's like my PlayStation 4 controller is always dead. My Nintendo Switch always seems to be dead as well when I have it in handheld mode. So having just, two AA batteries, like, that totally works for me. But of course, we also have to talk about software as well, and that's one of the instances that the Xbox Series X definitely has a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to comparative to the PlayStation 5, because there's not really any console exclusives out there right now. There are games that utilize the Xbox Series X to make it look better and run better and play better, but as far as a game like Spider-Man Miles Morales or Demon's Souls that is exclusively for the PlayStation 5, or at least has a PlayStation 5 version of it, the Xbox Series X does not have anything like that. But I did check out a few different games because I wanted to see sort of what was going on with this system. Now, the first game I checked out was Bright Memory. This game is currently available for $7.99, and this was the game I thought was the game that Xbox first showed off when they first showed off the Xbox Series X stuff. But that is actually a sequel to the game. This game, Bright Memory, is just essentially a demo of that game, of that sequel that's coming out, and honestly, it kind of sucks. Like, I think the gameplay can be fun. It's sort of a weird hybrid of an action game with a first-person shooter, and you have some slashing mechanics. There's a dodge mechanic in it as well. But for $8, the game only lasts you 37 minutes. It took me 37 minutes to play through the entire thing, and I just felt like that was very short. And as far as the performance of the game is concerned, it says that it is optimized for the Xbox Series X, but I honestly don't feel like that is the case. There is a ton of pop-up that occurs, and usually I don't sort of hark on things like that, but it's like I spent $500 for this system, and I'm seeing, basic pop-up that I would expect on the N64 or something like that, but not this game that's supposedly optimized for the Xbox Series X. There's also a ton of screen tearing in this game as well. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be an effect or something like that, because this is honestly some of the most screen tearing I have seen in a game since like the Xbox 360 era, but it's definitely noticeable. And if that is an effect, I do hope that in the full version of the game, which is actually called Bright Memory Infinite, that is removed, because I do think that there are some fun mechanics in the game. But even like the story, I have no idea what's going on in this story. I have no idea who this woman is, why she's going to different places, who this main antagonist is. Just a very disappointing game, and like I said, a bit deceitful, because I feel like a lot of people are going to pick up that game thinking that it is the game that we saw during the Xbox Series X gameplay presentation, but it is indeed not that game. The next game I checked out was NBA 2K21 Next Generation Edition. Now, you guys know I am a big basketball fan, so this was a game that I was actually very interested in, because I wasn't a huge fan of NBA 2K21 on current platforms. And the Nintendo Switch version, it looked decent, it ran decent, but I just felt the gameplay wasn't quite as good because they redid the whole shot stick mechanic. Now, obviously, the next generation version of this game is going to have improved visuals, and I definitely think there are improved visuals in this game. Things like hair, sweat, animations, and just sort of facial expressions as well are much more defined in this version of the game than in the current generation versions for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Now, as far as a huge leap is concerned, I'm not quite sure that there is that huge leap. It definitely doesn't feel like Xbox 360 to Xbox One or Xbox, the original Xbox to the Xbox 360 versions of NBA 2K, but there is a substantial leap. You just have to sort of look for it more so than you had to in previous versions of the game. Now, I've only played just standard basketball. I haven't gotten into the whole virtual currency, city mode, microtransactions out the butt. I just wanted to see what the actual game of basketball looked like, and there's definitely improvements over NBA 2K21. Now there's the updated version of the game. This version of the game has that update where you can adjust it so that the shot stick is more like it used to be, and that definitely made me very happy, and it made for a much better experience. As far as being a $70 game is concerned, I think unless you are a die-hard NBA fan who wants the best looking visuals, you could probably wait and just play your current generation game, which is probably going to go on sale, or wait for NBA 2K22. The final game I checked out so far is actually an Xbox 360 game. So I recently upgraded to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate because I was interested in some of those EA titles. Fight Night Champion. I've actually never played Fight Night Champion before. I've only played the other Fight Night games that were available on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. I never got around to checking out this game. So one thing I wanted to see was if this game was going to be any sort of enhanced on the Xbox Series X, and I honestly feel like it has been because this game looks absolutely gorgeous. This is an Xbox 360 game, and I definitely think it looks way better than it did on the original Xbox 360 because it almost, as far as the character models are concerned, you could almost say that they look like a current generation game. And you know, the facial damage, the animations themselves, of course the backgrounds, there's tons of stuff that definitely looks like an Xbox 360 game. But I feel like that the Xbox Series X did do some sort of enhancement to this version of the game. I also noticed that loading times are very, very minimal in this game as well, which I can't imagine was the case on the original Xbox 360. The game itself is definitely very fun. I think it still feels very fresh and modern, even though it's almost 10 years old, and was definitely a very big surprise for me. And that's something that I sort of want to talk about as we close out this video about the Xbox Series X, is I feel like the system has a lot of surprises as far as things like load times are concerned. On NBA 2K21, you definitely notice there are very minimal load times in this game, especially when you compare it to the current generation versions of this game. And that's something that is very impressive. It's definitely not as pronounced in Bright Memory, which I don't feel like this was optimized for the Xbox Series X. I probably should have picked a different game, but it was a game that I was interested in, so that's why I wanted to check it out. As far as a piece of hardware is concerned, I think the Xbox Series X is a very nice piece of hardware, but as far as spending $500 for it right now, I'm not quite sure you're going to get that return rate of investment within the first year or two of this system. I feel like this is a system that is going to need to cultivate. Obviously, we're already experiencing problems with games like Halo Infinite. I think if Halo Infinite would have came out in a solid enough state on this system, I would probably sing a bit of a different tune, but you really have to look at the game library, and unless you want to go back and revisit some games or play some games you might have missed on the Xbox One, you're going to be very, very limited in what this system is going to offer in terms of day one or at least even first year games for the system. Now, I definitely enjoy going back and playing some of these games that I missed out on, and there will be some other games that are going to be optimized for the Xbox Series X, games like The Medium, which comes out in January. So it's not all hope is lost with this system or anything like this, but I just feel like at $500, you need to be very sort of conscious about this, that it's going to be a great system. I think once these first party titles start rolling that really optimize the power of this system, you're going to see some absolutely crazy stuff. But as far as the launch lineup is concerned, you do have to sort of give the nod to the PlayStation 5. Now, if you're a diehard Xbox fan, I think it's definitely worth it. If you're someone who's looking for the best visuals that you're going to get on third-party games, the Xbox Series X is probably going to be the system for that from what we've seen so far. But I definitely enjoy this system. I don't really have a need for my Xbox One anymore, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to take away. It's a great upgrade for the Xbox One because now all of my games, well, most of my games, will be playable on this system, and that's a big deal, and there's going to be enhancements for these games when you're playing them. So I think that's a big win. It's just, if that launch lineup was there, this could be a killer of a system. But for right now, if you're not that interested in Xbox stuff, you might want to wait a little bit. But those are my honest thoughts on the Xbox Series X. I'm going to hook this back up to my television and play some more games this evening. Probably play a little more NBA 2K21 because I can't really play any more Bright Memory because I already beat it in 37 minutes. But let me know in the comments section down below if you picked up an Xbox Series S or an Xbox Series X, or if you picked up a PlayStation 5. And of course, I do have a PlayStation 5 coming in this week as well, so we'll also be doing videos on that. Be on the lookout for more gameplay related videos. Obviously with the PlayStation 5, there are games like Spider-Man Miles Morales and Demon's Souls that I'm definitely going to want to review and check out with you guys as well, so be on the lookout for that. And as always guys, thank you for checking out this video. I hope you like this little return to the game room. We'll be doing some bigger productions in the game room that sort of require more space and a table and some little fancy lights over here. You like these lights? You got a red one and a blue one. I can change the colors. So I upgrade things around here from time to time. And as always guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, check out other videos on the channel, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.